faithfully sharing value by interpreting great books worldwide. Hello, this is Sally here with the Book Talk. Today I'll be sharing the memoir of Chilean poet Pablo Neruda. He wrote, "I have endured many hardships," and Neruda is one of the 20th century's most globally influential lyric poets, also very familiar to Chinese readers. Neruda was a prodigy, making it big early. By 20, he had penned love poems that rocked the world. He was a nomadic poet. In his early 20s, the Chilean government sent him as consul to countries across Southeast Asia, Latin America, and Europe. There, he lived like a wandering poet and artist. Broke, he mingled with common folk, using his poetry skills and charm to connect with poetry lovers, and penned early works like Residence on Oath.
After Spain's civil war started in 1936, Neruda's poetry got more combative, producing works like Spain in My Heart.
In 1948, after a right-wing coup in Chile, Neruda fled again, traveling to places like France, Czechoslovakia, the Soviet Union, India, Italy, and even China. From the 1950s on, he hit a creative peak, publishing masterpieces like The Captain's Verses, Elemental Odes, and Odes to Common Things. In 1971, he won the Nobel Prize in Literature. The Nobel Committee called him a poet shouting for ideals and the future. His poems used nature's might to revive a continent's fate and dreams. In his Nobel speech, Neruda said the land and spirit filled his poetry. Poetry is all about blending reality and dreams, but he wrote his verses without bookish influences. His epic lines came straight from the nature he adored since childhood. Roaming as an adult, he met all sorts of people abroad. His feelings deepened and his poetry soared. He poured his life, where poetry and living were one, into this memoir. In I Have Endured Many Hardships, he praises poetry's power and thanks everyone who touched his life, helpers, influencers, lovers, and every place he stayed, while voicing care for his country, people, Latin America, and the world. I Have Endured Many Hardships was completed on September 14th, 1973. Less than 2 weeks later, Neruda passed away at his home on Isla Negra at age 69. The work begins by recounting the poet's childhood. Neruda was born on July 12, 1904, in Parral, a small town in central Chile. Chile is an extremely long, narrow country where everywhere feels close to the border. Thus, Neruda wrote that he was born at the nation's edge. He said, "Of my childhood years, I must first tell you that the only unforgettable character was rain. Southern downpours, like Antarctic waterfalls, poured from Cape Horn to the borderlands. In this border region, this western part of my country, I descended into the world. Descended to earth, descended into poetry, descended into rain." His earliest memories were of ceaseless rain. During endless rainy seasons, raindrops like glass needles shattered on roofs, while transparent waves battered windows. Each home became a boat sailing winter seas toward port. Outside my house, streets became muddy oceans. Indoors, stoves dried steaming socks and clothes, shoes puffing like tiny locomotives. Then came floods, sweeping away riverside homes, followed by earthquakes and volcanic eruptions. After turning two, his father moved the family to coastal Temuco, where they continued encountering nature's raw power. He never saw nature as frightening. "The raging sea," he said, "had not just foaming waves taller than us. It possessed a colossal booming heart, the universe's own pulse." Utterly astonished, he felt he'd glimpsed a soul-stirring mystery. Neruda said his creative drive began in early childhood.
When barely able to write, he scrawled lines on paper,
Rhyming verses expressing feelings for his loving mother. His father thought he'd copied them, proof Neruda possessed innate poetic sensitivity. In Timuco, he learned sea swimming, horseback riding across muddy slopes to explore distant lands, and picking crimson poppy petals. Tucked between book pages, he witnessed nature's grandeur and encountered passionate rural folks during horseback wanderings. In Temuco, he attended elementary and secondary school. Precocious, he ghost-wrote love letters as a child. Soon he too experienced first love. By 14, he published his debut poem in a Santiago magazine. Graduating high school with long hair and slender build, he embodied a drifting young poet. In 1921, clad in black poet's attire, he boarded a train to university in Santiago, ready to recite anytime. At university, he switched to cheap Spanish cloaks, a trend among penniless bohemians. The cloaks seemed artistic but hid their poverty. Neruda moved frequently due to poverty and faced urban elitism at poetry readings. University elites scorned provincial poets, but Neruda's talent couldn't be buried. During university, he wrote his first epic poem, Song of the Feast, winning top honors in a national contest. In 1923, writing feverishly, he completed his debut poetry collection, Dawn. To self-publish, he sold furniture, pawned his father's treasured clock, and scraped funds from friends.
Though destitute, Neruda was ecstatic.
He said, I never doubted poetry's necessity, like bread, plates, or crafted woodwork. I'll write finer, more beautiful books, he declared. Words will pour like wine into other languages' cups, singing worldwide, spreading fragrance. But a poet's first book happens only once, making it uniquely precious. True enough, Neruda's creativity soon exploded, drawing from his journey from hometown to Santiago, experiencing love's warmth and chill, plus his obsession with southern Chile's nature. He wrote 20 stunning love poems, one by one. Their themes vary endlessly, capturing every lover's emotion, each word intense yet expansive. For lovers in bliss, I'll climb mountains to pick flowers of happiness for you. Bluebells, dark hazelnuts, baskets of simple kisses. For heartbreak, searing pain. Another verse, wind sings through a megaphone. I carry such a fierce urge to cry. Each poem fuses romance with Neruda's keenest nature observations and wildest dreams. Like the evening star, pecked by night birds, shines like my soul enchanted by you. Night gallops on a shadowy horse, scattering blue tassels over fields. By an unnamed wreck on the Calavi River, he discovered an abandoned skiff. Sitting there, recalling old docks and endless gull wings at river mouths, he crafted these lines. The sea's noisy belt encircles shores. Cold stars emerge as black birds migrate. The abandoned ones like a dawn dock, only a trembling dark shadow writhing in my hands. He titled this A Song of Despair. These became 20 love poems and a song of despair, later hailed as the pinnacle of 20th century love poetry. In Latin America, famous writers often entered diplomacy. Neruda soon got offers. He casually chose Rangoon, Burma's capital, as consul, but his journey there became a Eurasian odyssey. In June 1927, he sailed across the Atlantic to Lisbon, then visited Madrid, Paris, Marseille, Shanghai, and Singapore. From Singapore, days by ship to Rangoon, his trip packed with adventures, fun, and perils. In Shanghai, rickshaw bandits robbed his meager possessions. In Jakarta, he befriended a guard orangutang. In Colombo, Sri Lanka's capital, he kept a cat that fought cobras. He saw survival skills of common people in many places, like in Sri Lanka watching farmers drive 500 wild elephants. When taming them in elephant pens for hard labor, he recalled how Chilean whalers expertly hunted sperm whales to harvest treasures inside them. Among many bizarre experiences in Southeast Asia, one nighttime encounter made him realize the higher calling of his poetry. Once, on a long bus ride from Laos through Cambodia to Saigon, only 4 or 5 passengers remained in the rundown vehicle. Late at night, he suddenly noticed these men looked menacing, exchanging knowing glances and eyeing him stealthily. He thought he'd fallen into a trap and would die at the hands of robbers. But soon, lights appeared one by one on the road, torches were lit, and traditional yet jarring Cambodian music started playing. The bus stopped, and a man boarded, speaking English, telling him the bus was broken with no place to stay. To help you, the foreigner, have a comfortable night outdoors, the passengers invited you to watch a Cambodian sacred dance. Neruda was thrilled. He got off immediately to watch until sunrise. He said this experience taught him poets shouldn't fear people, Poets should believe hands of friendship extend everywhere, and the most beautiful flowers bloom even in darkness. As the 1930s passed, midway, Neruda's wandering and writing life no longer brought just disappointment, as global political and military events drew him in, leaving him deeply worried. First, the bloody Spanish Civil War erupted in 1936. After the war, dictator Franco took power, exiling many Spanish Republican fighters. Neruda, having just been dismissed as consul in Madrid, went to Paris to launch a refugee rescue operation, relocating them to South America. Neruda said, "Starting this action came not just from a diplomat's duty, but from the demands his poetry placed on him." By the end of 1937, he finished a long poem themed on the Spanish Civil War, Spain in My Heart, honoring the blood-stained Republican fighters in Madrid. Madrid, the heroic city in his heart, you grow strong under stars' blows and fire's tremors. Your quakes break roses, you're wrapped in eternal laurels. Later, as consul in Mexico, he witnessed government massacres of striking workers and experienced Guatemala's dictatorial terror. Finally returning to Chile in 1943, the nation stood on the brink of political turmoil. In 1945, Chile's Communist Party was democratically elected, but overthrown by a coup 3 years later. Having joined the Communist Party, Neruda suddenly became a wanted stranger in his homeland. He changed hideouts daily, sheltering with strangers to evade persecution. He stayed with farmer engineers, lawyers, sailors, doctors, miners, thus deeply reconnecting with his people. "My poet's body," he said, "has scattered across my homeland, in fields, ports, cities, forests, everywhere." After hardships, Neruda crossed the Andes, leaving his perilous homeland, long accustomed to wandering. Soon abroad, he attended Pushkin's centenary in the USSR, falling for Moscow's ice palace beauty. In 1951, he traveled from USSR to China for a peace conference, awarding the Lenin Peace Prize to Sun Qingling, struck by Chinese smiles. A standout experience occurred in Italy, land of deep folk poetry traditions. During a Rome train transfer, before stopping, crowds surged toward his carriage. Countless well-wishers held bouquets, shouting, "Neruda!" jostling each other. "Like a river," they chanted. "Stay in Rome! Don't leave Italy! Keep the poet here!" Neruda was deeply moved. Days later, hosted on Capri, its people impoverished but landscapes breathtaking, reminding him of Chile. There he enjoyed his finest creative period. Lonely, he deepened his bond with lover Mathilde. Poverty brought daily joy among the world's purest people. Later, Neruda's time in the small dwelling on Capri was turned into a novel, The Postman, by a Chilean writer, and made into a famous Oscar-winning film. In 1952, Neruda ended his exile and returned to settle in Santiago. By then, he had completed his mature poetry collection Residence on Earth in 3 volumes and published elemental odes dedicated to Latin America, writing the continent's history through poetry. The poet's fame was at its zenith. 2 years later, on his 50th birthday, dozens of writers and poets from around the world came to celebrate him. World War II had ended, but to prevent another war and stop nuclear weapons from being used again, global peace forces were active, and Neruda received more invitations to join international peace conferences held worldwide. He visited Sri Lanka, Burma, the Soviet Union, and other countries again. In 1951, he came to China to award the International Peace Prize to Sun Qingling. In 1957, Neruda visited China for the second time, touring places like Kunming, the Yangtze River, Three Gorges, and Beijing's Tiananmen Square. He specifically wrote a poem, Song of China's Land. Your mountains, rivers, and cliffs, your sky, clouds, and people. This is an impregnable fortress. However, wherever he went, what he cared about most were the expressions and temperament of ordinary people in city streets and rural fields. Some countries had vibrant public morale and lively emotions, while others were under political repression with gloom on people's faces. In the 1958 poetry collection Extravaganza, his new poem Keeping Quiet was included. The poem writes, "Let's count to 12 and then keep quiet. Let us stop our hands, help the engines, let fishermen on cold seas stop killing whales. Let salt miners look at their worn hands. Let makers of gas bombs, those victorious exterminators, change into clean clothes, do nothing, just walk with brothers under the shade of trees." He called on the chaotic world to pause and reflect, eagerly hoping for less conflict, less oppression, more mindfulness of each moment, more mutual love and enjoyment of coexistence. By the 1950s, Neruda had essentially become a symbol of the international left-wing movement. He was a steadfast member of the Chilean Communist Party. Due to this identity, he received extraordinary attention from the international communist movement. He wrote in his book, "I'm glad to meet so many honest, simple people in the party who fight for ordinary people's dignity and justice, leaving personal vanity, authoritarianism, and material interests far behind." When Fidel Castro's communist revolution triumphed in Cuba, Neruda cheered wildly. Later, when Castro spoke in Venezuela, he joined 200,000 listeners, excitedly hearing him for 4 hours. He also met Latin American legend Che Guevara. Guevara told him he'd read Neruda's poetry to comrades during guerrilla warfare. General Canto, when Che Guevara was killed in 1967, this book remained in his bag. Neruda's works kept publishing. News of his Nobel Prize nominations circulated yearly. By 1963, it seemed certain. Chilean radio repeatedly announced Neruda as the consensus winner in the Nobel Committee's internal vote. Hearing this, Neruda and his wife activated Family Defense Plan Number 3, stockpiling food at their island home, and red wine, locked the gate, stored favorite novels, ready to block all journalists and busybodies once the award came. Sure enough, before the announcement, reporters prowled like tigers around his home, a sight Neruda detested. He never visited dignitaries' mansions and always despised professional headline chasers. He only wanted to be among the people, who, unlike snobs pretending culture or ignorant celebrity chasers, never bothered others. The people truly loved poets, moved to tears by their burning words. Yet that year's Nobel winner wasn't him, and this repeated annually. In 1970, Neruda's friend Salvador Allende, a communist-sympathizing Chilean leftist, won the election and took office. He implemented nationalization policies, elevated worker status, making Chile internationally prominent. He appointed Neruda as ambassador to Paris. The next year, 1971, Neruda heard the Nobel Prize was practically guaranteed. He told Sweden's ambassador in Santiago that post-announcement, he'd make no statements or public speeches. He only wanted Allende informed early. He wanted his dear friend to share the joy, and kept his word. After winning, he took no interview calls, nor gave routine thank yous.
He didn't even read mountains of telegrams and congratulatory letters.
At November's ceremony, he and his wife went to Stockholm, meeting Sweden's king, a lifelong man of the people, now seeing royalty. His first king encounter marked this memoir's closing chapters. In spring 1972, declining health forced Neruda back from Europe to Chile. That same year, Penn International invited him to capitalist stronghold America for the first time. He saw his readings draw thousands there too.
But in Chile, U.S. Western spies conspired with exiled oligarchs and anti-communist soldiers to overthrow Allende through terror.
On September 11, 1973, right-wing General Pinochet staged a coup. Allende died defending the presidential palace. 3 days after Allende's death, Neruda wrote this memoir's final lines at his Isla Negra home. Grieving, he said, "Allende was a great president and pure idealist. He underestimated reactionaries, and the people who should have defended him weren't mobilized, leaving him alone in the palace, fighting soldiers with a pistol. I have endured many hardships, ends in profound sorrow." Yet the memoir's overall tone remains heroic and uplifting. As a poet and cosmopolitan, Neruda's vision and empathy far surpassed ordinary artists. He completely fused poetry with patriotism, with the common people's sentiments, with passion for nature, and with his communist faith. He wrote in the book, "I hope the vast majority, meaning everyone, can speak, read, listen, and thrive. I never approve of struggle, except to end all struggles through struggle. I never endorse harshness, except to eliminate harshness by harsh means. I have chosen the path I must take, because I believe this path will lead us all to a realm of eternal mutual love. I fight for this universally existing, boundless, infinite goodwill." He firmly believes the world will improve, not because he trusts human nature, but because he trusts the power of poetry. In the book, he recalls several incidents that showcase the brilliance of poetry's power. The first incident happened when he had just published his first poetry collection, Dawn. One night, he encountered two men fighting in a dance hall. Despite his frail physique, he went up and harshly scolded them, calling them scoundrels. As he was leaving, he found one of them, a burly man, blocking the dance hall entrance. Neruda thought he was about to be beaten up. His friends had all fled in fear, but unexpectedly, the man's fierce expression suddenly turned gentle and sorrowful. He asked, "Are you the poet Neruda? I'm so unlucky. I'm standing before the poet I admire most, and he just called me a scoundrel." This man told Neruda that he and his fiancée fell in love by reciting Neruda's poems together. And, he took out a photo of his fiancée, hoping Neruda would hold it, then started reciting Neruda's poems impulsively. The second incident was after his return to Chile in 1942. One day in Santiago, someone suddenly drove a small car to his home without introducing himself, and without saying where they were going, invited him into the car. Neruda trusted him, and the car ended up taking him to Santiago's largest market. It turned out this man was from the Market Porters Union, inviting Neruda to give a talk. In a chaotic space, Neruda was surrounded by 50 porters in patched shirts, apron sacks, even shirtless, every eye fixed on him. Not knowing what to say, he simply pulled out a copy of Spain in My Heart from his pocket and began reciting poems one after another. "Generals, traitors, look at my dead home, look at shattered Spain. Yet from every dead home, burning weapons sprout instead of flowers. From every hole in Spain, Spain grows anew. From every dead child springs a rifle with eyes. Every crime births bullets. Someday they'll pierce your hearts. Come see. Come see blood flowing through the streets. Come see blood flowing through the streets. Come see blood flowing through the streets." Spain in My Heart was written from his Spanish Civil War experiences. Neruda worried such poetry might be hard for these worker audiences to grasp. But they wept. One said, "Nothing ever moved us like this." The third incident occurred at Chile's largest coal mine, Lota. One scorching day, Neruda visited and saw a man emerge from a narrow shaft, looking hellish. Labor deformed his face. Dust reddened his eyes.
Yet he extended rough hands, wrinkled like prairie maps, eyes blazing.
He said, "Brother, I've known you forever." Neruda was profoundly moved. No award compares to this moment, he reflected. This miner, like millions of laborers, endured hardship. But reading Neruda, Chile's winds, nights, and stars whispered, "You're not alone. A poet thinks of your suffering." Neruda said, "Through aesthetic struggle and navigating writing's labyrinth, I became my people's poet, my proudest title." He remained a poet believing in sacred missions, that poetry brings humanity's most needed strength. Behind this conviction and his turbulent life stood nature, especially the sea, his childhood friend. In his short poem, Ode to Seaside Flowers, "I'm a pastoral poet, living like hunters, lighting beach fires at night. Only this flower, only the sea's solitude. And you, like the earth's rose, live innocently and joyfully, demanding I go to battle. I summon new tides, awaken hope. I am the brother of all humankind. Duty and love are my two wings." In nature, Neruda reflects on himself, chanting hope. Through this memoir, we can easily see the hardships of Neruda's life, sometimes accepting appointments, sometimes forced into exile, embarking on countless journeys and ocean crossings. Whenever he went to sea, he cast aside all worries and found the peace and joy of returning home. In his later years, he settled in Chile, on Isla Negra near Valparaiso. Every day, he watched the sea from his window, feeling it gazed back with 1,000 foam eyes. In the waves, he still recognized storms from his youth. The power of earthquakes and floods reveals nature's terrifying stubbornness. In the face of such immense power, the fame and fortune humans chase on land seem utterly trivial and laughable. For a poet who clings closely to the sea, his happiness is unmatched. All right, that's the end of our interpretation of Neruda's memoir. Reading notes are below the audio. See you next time.